Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Bean, and today we're going to talk about publishing Vensim models on Forio Epicenter. And I'm going to start off today explaining a little bit about what Vensim, Vensim models are, and uh, and then I'm going to go on to explaining more around seeing some finished simulations, see what these finished simulations look like, then move on to building some example simulations with you. We're going to start with a Vensim model and then move on to seeing how you can create an online interface to your Vensim model using Epicenter. And at the end of the webinar, I'll provide some information about how to get free account access to Epicenter and also discuss next steps and answer any questions that you have. So let's get started. Let's talk about what Forio Epicenter is. Forio Epicenter is an online platform for hosting server-side models, Vensim models. So the idea is that you would upload your Vensim model to Forio Epicenter, and then you can create an online interface to your Vensim model. And you can also do things like manage user access. And that becomes really important for potentially if you're providing subscriptions to your simulation, you're going to limit the number of people who can access it. Or if you're doing something like having a multiplayer simulation, if you need to do that, then you'll need to be able to distinguish between different users who are accessing the same model simultaneously. And we're going to go through those examples today. Vensim, both Vensim and Ventity are supported on Forio Epicenter, and other languages are too. And in some cases, people will combine, for example, Vensim with other tools like Python, for example, and then use Python libraries to combine with Vensim. We're not going to cover a lot of that today, but I just wanted to make everyone aware that there are these other things that you can do server side to combine your Vensim model with other applications if you choose to do that. Today, we're going to focus completely on Vensim and just using the basic versions of Vensim in order to create a model and things like that. And I thought a great way to start this today would be to look at some example applications built on Epicenter and just kind of show those as a way of kind of orienting everyone around what are we talking about? What does a finished application look like? And then we're going to jump into actually building one of these applications together. All right, starting off here, let's look at an application that was recently done with the Centers for Disease Control here in the United States. It's a Vensim-based prevention impact simulation model. It's called PRISM. So PRISM stands for Prevention Impact Simulation Model. And it has some neat features. One of the things that I like about it is that you can use different versions of the Vensim model. So what the developers of this model did is they created, I believe, 7 different versions of the model. And what it does is kind of choose which model is going to get used based on information about your local area and things like that. So, if I go in here, for example, and I use the national averages for these, and it'll still kind of fill in over here, then what it'll do is it'll recommend a model for me, so I can look at demographic information complete, and it's saying what I should do is choose the national model. But if I change to something like, let's say, a large city, maybe that has 700, or a medium size or large city of 735,000 people with a much greater population density, something like that, and then I hit demographic information complete, it's going to choose instead the urban area version of the Vensim model. And so this is kind of a neat way to approach it, and something nice that this group has done. We can go ahead and select that then. This is a fairly polished high production value simulation with a lot of details in it. It has a tour where it can go through and kind of explain various versions of the model, like how to specify scenario, explore results. They have these videos that they've embedded within the simulation. There are results, of course, that you can look at, where we can look at, and this is a health model, so it's looking at morbidity and mortality across the US based on certain issues like cardiovascular disease and smoking and things like that. So you can see sort of cardiovascular events per 1,000 adults and things like that that are in here as a baseline run. But the real power of the tool comes from when you create scenarios. So the style of simulation is called a run comparison simulation. And what it lets you do is kind of build up a storyline, build up a scenario that you want to create, and then try it out and see what implications would have if you changed your assumptions. It's very similar to what you would do with Vensim when you're running Vensim on your computer, but in this case, instead of using Vensim, we're running it through the browser, so the end users don't need to have Vensim installed on their machine. It's easy to access. And then, another important piece of this often is that um, the end users don't have direct access to the model. The model intellectual property can be protected, and the users can still interact with that model. So here, for example, I'm going to change the cigarette tax, and I can experiment with different implementation costs. And I can also go in and do something like, what if I increase physical activities for certain groups? I can do that and dial that up over time, in certain cases. And then when I do that, what I'm allowed to do then is run that scenario, and it's showing me first off what I selected and what I didn't change. And then I can name it. This is my smoking and physical education scenario, and I'll go ahead and save that and run it. And then what it does is it will allow me to compare outcomes relative to that baseline outcome over time to see how it changed over time. So by reducing smoking and increasing physical education, I see a reduction in mortality, over the course of the next 40 years. And I can drill down and look at more details here in terms of, what kinds of events are happening with, again, cardiovascular events, or what happens with new youth interventions. And there's quite a few youth interventions in this one related to the physical activity piece that I turned on here, and so on. So this gives me an opportunity for reviewing the results in different ways and look at cost effectiveness of strategies, and see nice reports that show the results. And again, the end user is able to interact with this and save their assumptions and things. A couple other things that are useful to point out in this style of sim, again, this is a run comparison or scenario comparison simulation, is that the URL here is not a Forio URL. So the CDC, when they were working with this, decided that they didn't want this to the URL to have the Forio URL in it. So there's a way of setting it up that does that. It actually still uses Forio servers to run and host this simulation, but it has a unique URL, and you can do that as well. Another example of a scenario comparison or run comparison simulation that is using our template tools, and we're going to experiment with these a bit today when we go through this, is this behavioral infectious disease simulation. And this was something that was created again within a Vensim model, and it's hosted on our site. It's developed by Urin Struben, and hopefully I didn't mispronounce the name too much, but Urin put this up on our site, and started with a Vensim model. Here you can see there's a video available explaining the overview of the simulation, and the idea is to look at COVID-19 and sort of look at the effects over time at different stages and things like that, and try out different scenarios. So the idea here is that you can go in and change parameters, and you can look at things like case testing and reporting, policy responsiveness, symptom originating testing, etc., vaccination, and then get into things like what if there was increased social distancing in certain regions and things like that. You could change that for a bunch of different regions here, and then look at what the impact might be if in this case if we're increasing social distancing. So this is my social distancing, I'll call it distancing scenario, and I can go ahead and save and simulate, and it's going to run that result then. And then now I have a new graph where I can compare, here's the baseline again. I can switch it over to the distancing result and see how that compares to the baseline. So another approach for doing simulations online, and again, providing, starting with a Vensim model, uploading it, and then creating this scenario comparison interface. Another entirely different style of simulation that is frequently done with Forio Epicenter are turn-based games. And this is something that a lot of people have seen with sims in the past. And let me log into this. Oh, let me do it this way today. I'm going to start off with the instructor view. What I'm going to do with this one is show you what a facilitator would see initially. So this is someone who's running it. And this is another view and something that's easy to do online with this, where you can create a group and then look at, for example, class results within a group here, and actually see what someone did when they were running through the simulation. So this is the interface to the sim, and you can see different results for a different group that was playing this out. This person has not yet finished the sim, but they're partway through. kind of see what they did. You can see there are different reports that are available as they played through. Here's how this person changed their price, customer purchases, and this is intended to be more of a game. And we can see here too, sort of a fancier plot that shows different pie charts against different market segments here, different performance levels over time. And the concept for the user then is to make decisions and advance the simulation turn by turn. And there's different results that are available as they play through that simulation and news and so forth. So, and with this style of sim too, because they're all online, there's an opportunity to have a leaderboard and look at results for different people who are in, say, the same workshop or the same class or something like this. And again, a very popular and common type of simulation that's built using Forio Epicenter. The third example that I want to share for today is the multiplayer simulation. And to illustrate that, what I'm going to do is log in as 4 different players. And what I'm using today to do that is this feature in Chrome that lets me switch users. So this is as if I had 4 different computers here, but I'm only using my one computer to illustrate this, and I'm going to go through this together. So let me go ahead and log in as user 1. Oh, and the simulation is closed for play right now, so let me show you how you open it first. I'm going to log in here as the facilitator now. And I have the facilitator page open. I'm going to go in here and open the simulation. It was closed. I'm going to go ahead and open it up. So the facilitator now has an open the sim for play. And then if I go back to this person, the simulation now is open. So this is player 1. So setting up for the simulation, you can see results. This person is logged in as Telcus Medical. There's a timer in the sim, so the time is counting down. This is how much time the player has left to play. And now I'm going to go into player 2. So a second player in a multiplayer simulation, and all these people are interacting within the same world. That's sort of the concept. This person is playing the role of Lamar. I'm going to now go to player 3. And this person is going to play the role of Ada Robotics. This is a medical supply simulation. Each of them have different decisions. I'll show you that in a minute. And finally, player 4 here, logging in as player 4. And you can see here, this is Metabot Labs. So now all 4 players are logged in. They're all playing within the same world. There's all kinds of information around roles and things like that, different reports that are available that show various outcomes from the simulation. And then each player makes decisions. But in order for the simulation to advance, what needs to happen is all 4 players need to submit their decisions, and then the simulation advances next round. This is the way that a turn-based multiplayer simulation can work. Again, running a model underneath it here. So what would happen is Metabot Labs might make some decisions about different investments that they want to make. And here I'm just going to enter some things and then enter a strategy in for that and set a goal that they want to set. They submit their decisions. And now it still has an advance. We're still in year 1 because the other 3 players have not yet submitted. So I'm going to quickly go to the other players here and change some decisions for them. So we'll see different outcomes and establish this is player 2. We're going to go ahead and proceed. And now I'm going to go to the 3rd player, Lamar, make some changes in decisions here for them. And then go to setting this up and say I'm sure for this one. And finally, the 4th player, the last player here who hasn't submitted decisions, is going to submit. And when the 4th player submits their decisions, what will happen is the simulation will advance to the next round because all of the players now have submitted their decisions, and it's possible for the simulation to advance. So I'm going to go ahead and submit now, and you'll see, here we are still in year 1. As soon as I submit, you'll see a yes, I'm sure. I'm going to go ahead and submit. And the simulation now has advanced to year 2. So we see the new results for the simulation. And if I look at reports, for example, and market share now, and again, I made some pretty arbitrary decisions there, as you saw, but you can see that based on those arbitrary decisions that Ada Robotics did better than, for example, Lamar in this exam. And this would continue on from round to round, over the course of, several rounds, maybe 5 or 6 rounds or something like that. And this is what we mean by multiplayer simulation. So the 3 examples that I shared with you so far today, and these are different examples that can be built on Epicenter, are what we call scenario or run comparison simulations, like this, CDC simulation where we're comparing runs together, or the behavioral infectious disease simulator, based on the COVID-19, for example. So that's one example. The second example is a turn-based single-player simulation, as we saw here with this marketing simulation, where we were able to make decisions in advance over time. And the third one is a multiplayer simulation. And I thought it'd be fun, just to ask a quick question of everybody on here, and what type of simulation are you consider building? And it's okay to say, I'm not sure, I'm evaluating options, but I'm curious to see what of these three types of sims that I just shared are you considering building here? So go ahead and just fill that in. We'll just take a few seconds to get some answers here. I see a lot of people answering. Thank you for that. We'll let it go for a few more seconds to kind of see what people are most interested in. All right, we're still getting a lot of answers coming in. That's terrific. And we're going to leave it at that now. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. We have 10 more seconds to answer. If you would like to, just go ahead and submit. No problem if you don't. Right now, we get a little bit of sense for what's going on. All right, we're going to go ahead now and end the poll. Thank you very much for contributing. And here's what you can see for the results. Let me just share this with you. So what you can see here is that by far, most of you who are on this webinar today are interested in the scenario comparison simulation. A few people are interested in multiplayer. Many people who are still evaluating, and that certainly makes sense. There's different options here and things like that. And probably few people interested in single player. And what I'm going to do then as a consequence of these poll results today is focus in on scenario comparison simulations. So I'm going to spend a little bit more time on scenario comparison than the other types, just so that we cover this. And I'll start with that as my example today too. All right, thank you very much for that information. But before I get to showing the scenario, how to build a scenario comparison simulation, I want to explain just a little bit more about our platform and sort of different ways that people build simulations on our platform. And the way I like to frame this is, kind of two different types of users. And the first one is framed by this person here. So this person is a modeler, a Vensim modeler who's working by himself. He's built a Vensim model and he'd like to get it online. And this person does not have any HTML background. They're someone who knows how to use Vensim. They're, say, an expert system dynamics modeler, but they're not expert at web design. They're not expert at doing HTML or writing JavaScript or programming and things like that. But this person would like to get a model online. And this type of person is well supported with Forio Epicenter. So Epicenter can support this kind of user with the platform. And we're going to talk about how this person uses the platform and what you can do if you are in this situation where you're, working by yourself and you want to get a model online. But there's also a second group that uses Forio Epicenter as well, and that's a team that maybe has the skills divided up into different sets. So you might, in addition to having a modeler who's using Vensim for building the model out, you might also have someone who's actually a UI designer, professional UI designer who's contributing to the design of the simulation. You have maybe one, maybe two, maybe three web developers who are collaborating together to implement the web design that was created by the UI designer. You might also have other subject matter experts that are going to contribute, and those people would probably be on the team too. I should probably include them on this list. Then you have QA. If you're releasing this and you're giving it out to, hundreds or thousands of people, and they're going to work on different browsers. They might work on Firefox or Chrome or Edge and so forth. And they might work on smartphones and on tablets and on laptops. And so you want to make sure that you're testing to make sure that the interface that was implemented by these different web developers is going to work for all of them. And because you have all these people involved, you also likely have a project manager. So again, two kind of approaches for building these simulations. We have the lone modeler building an application in Epicenter, and then we have this type. And both of these people, both of these groups of people are supported with the platform. And the way that we do that is we have a stack of interface technologies. And at the top of the stack is kind of a what you see is what you get, which that's what this WYSIWYG stands for. What you see is what you get design tool that is sort of a template-based tool for building interfaces. So it's easy to use, and that's for the lone modeler who wants to build something. And if you have a team of people that are working together, then you would use these libraries, these JavaScript libraries like Flow.js or Epicenter.js. And Flow.js and Epicenter.js are JavaScript libraries that you can use for building this. And all of these kind of fit together. So you can start off by using the user interface builder to create interfaces. And then as you get more sophisticated, if you want to, you can drill down into using Flow.js or Epicenter.js. But there are many people who use the platform who never use those alternative versions and are very happy just using the user interface builder the full time. And then there, in addition to those libraries, there's other things like the aggregate APIs and base APIs. Sometimes people use those for creating, say, native smartphone applications using Forio Epicenter. To work with the top layer here, you don't need any HTML experience or any knowledge of HTML. To use these libraries here, you need a little bit of HTML experience for Flow.js, and here for Epicenter.js, you need HTML and JavaScript and things like that to do it. And for this, what I want to do is just one last time here is go to one last poll for today and ask you again, kind of what is your experience with HTML? And if you could just fill this in quickly, and then we'll share results in a second. I'm curious about how much experience you have with HTML, if you have any at all, or if you have a little bit. There's another question here around if you know some CSS and HTML and JavaScript, or if you use sort of the fancier things like React and Angular libraries for building things. And the answers are coming in. I'm going to just leave it open for a few more seconds. These are, and this is our last survey for today. I'm not going to do too much more of this, but I think it's useful to kind of understand where people are in terms of the background. And we actually have quite a range here that's coming in, but let me just wait a couple more seconds, let people fill it in. Okay, I think we're there. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results with you. And so you should see these polling results now. And what you can see is most people have, or not most, but a plurality of people, the largest portion of people do not know any HTML, and that's great. And we're going to talk about tools today that work without any knowledge of HTML. And then a number of people, which is sort of like me, know a little HTML, maybe a little bit of CSS and JavaScript, but don't really write much because there's many fewer people, only 10 or 11% that have even written some JavaScript code. So that's very helpful. And that's going to kind of inform how we proceed today. So what I'm going to do then is start by using the user interface builder tool today. And I'm going to start with the scenario planning example or scenario comparison example that we have. And what I thought I would do with that is use an example, since this is such, the news right now so much. There's Tom Fitteman at Ventana put together a community coronavirus model, which is really interesting. And kind of, it's a nice model in that it's a fairly simple model. And he's done a whole series on this. Probably a lot of you have already seen this coming through from Tom. And he has a nice video that kind of explains how the model works and what it's supposed to be doing. And I thought I would use that example today. And this is part of, as you're probably aware, most of you are, I think, that there's, Tom has this model library, MetaSD, and there's a bunch of different models in there. They're really nice, and he's kind enough to make these available under the MIT license, which is meaning that you're allowed to use and share this model and things like that. So that's what I'm going to be using for my example today. And I have this model open in Vensim. Let me show this to you. Here's the model that's created, and most of the model kind of sits here in this frame. You can see here it's a typical SIR model. We have susceptible, exposed, infected, and then two stocks for recovered or deaths. And then in green here, what Tom has done is put in different policy levers that you can experiment. Like, for example, potential isolation effectiveness, isolation reaction time, and things like that. And then in addition, there's a sort of set of controls. You can see these controls over here, and you can experiment with things like what's the strain on a hospital, for example. So again, this model is available from Tom's library, and this is the model we're going to use for kind of building something together in Epicenter today. All right, so the first thing we need to do is to get into Epicenter, and I'm going to go to my account here. This is an account I'm using today, and again, I'm going to show you how you can create your own account for setting this up in the future. And the first thing I'm going to do here is create a new project. So I'm creating a new project, and I'm going to call this my COVID-19 scenario simulation, community scenario simulation, or something. Let's do it that way. Community simulation. There we go. Good enough. All right, and what you can see here when I type this in is that a project ID is created that's a URL friendly ID. So it says forio.com/app/sims, which is the name of the account I'm currently using. Your name this would be different for your own account. And then the name of the simulation. You can see, I put in some things here. It changes things to lowercase and it makes it kind of URL friendly. So you can't have spaces in URLs. So it's converted those to hyphens. And then we've kind of created this list. If I don't like that name, if I think it's too long or something like that, I can remove some of that. It's going to shorten up the name of the URL for me if I want to use it that way. Again, this is sort of illustrating the fact that Epicenter is not just an authoring environment where you're authoring the interface, but also for hosting purposes, right? So, and here then what we're going to do is set access to the interface that I'm creating. I can create 3 levels of access. I can make it public, authenticated, meaning that end users have to log in order to gain access, or private. And what private means here is that only I, as the simulation interface author, have access to the interface. And this would be, you'd use private for when you're developing an interface for the first time. You don't want it to be out there publicly seen. But then when you're ready to launch, you would either make it public or authenticated. And for today, what I'm gonna do is make this one. I think what I'll do is I'll start it off as private. And then after I'm finished, I'll move it over to public so it'll be available for everyone to see. So let's go ahead and create that project. And now we have our the setup for this. And what you can see here over on the left is the project itself, which is the COVID-19 community simulation. There's a model folder, and right now that model folder is empty. You can see no files found. I haven't uploaded my Vensim model into the interface yet, into Epicenter. I also have an interface folder, and it has subfolders in it for different groups. And but if I drill down in any of those subfolders, you see those are empty as well. So what I've got is sort of an empty interface at the moment for this. And if I click on the URL that it's created for me, you'll get this little robot that says the project page is not, you're not able to view it. So obviously what I need to do first here is get my model into Epicenter. And first thing that what I want to do for today, part of what I want to do is be able to explain how do you go about, what are sort of the tricks and things like that for doing it. And a mistake that people sometimes make when they're first uploading their very first Vensim model to Epicenter is they upload the .mdl file instead of the binary file. So what you need to do to get Vensim, to get your model into Epicenter, is you need to save it here, not as a text file as the .mdl, but instead save it as a binary format, .vmfx if you're using, I think, version 8 or later of Vensim, and .vmf for older versions of Vensim. So either one of those will work. I've actually gone ahead and already saved my model with this name. So then all I need to do to get it in here is upload my model. So I've got this folder open here, and you can see I've got let's see, where is it? This model here that is saved from earlier today. I'm going to go ahead and just drag this into my my folder, and it will upload it for me. So now the model has been uploaded, and you can see it, community corona 8.vmfx. This is the model from Tom that I've uploaded here. Okay, I need to do that first. So the first step is actually to upload the model, and then the next step is to create the interface. So you want to do them in that order in order to, and the reason for that is that the interface builder wants to look at what you've uploaded to determine what can be done with that model. And different types of things you might upload have different, different interfaces can be built with them. So the first thing that the interface builder does will look at this this model and then make suggestions for the type of simulation interface that you want to create. And here we can see the interface builder, and it's looked at the Vensim model that I just uploaded, and it's saying, well, there's 3 possibilities. Actually, all 3 of the things I've kind of shared today. A turn-by-turn based single-player sim could be built using this model. Maybe in some ways a multiplayer game could be built. There's probably some ways to do this. But what we want to do right now is create a run comparison simulation based on what's here. So let's go ahead and click on run comparison. And then what it does is it builds a set of pages that show how this, how how a run comparison should work. So there's a number of things that you're going to do with a run comparison that would be different than those other types of simulations, and it's kind of creating a set of pages for the interface that would work for that. And I don't have to follow this. I could change these pages out. I wanted, just to illustrate that here, there's a bunch of different page designs that are available in Epicenter in this tool, and I could use those instead, and I can add new pages and extend it, but this is a starting point for me. And so the very first thing I probably want to do with this is create a header and footer. I'm going to call this my COVID-19 simulation, and I might want to put a logo in there, and I've in advance I've sort of found a logo that I thought I could use for today for my sim that has kind of a look of this virus here. I thought this, let me go ahead and size that down. So I'm going to put this in, and now I will select it for my header logo. And you can already see if I look at the intro page, it's already starting to look, a bit more like an interface that I've created here that I want to work. And I could also put in some intro text here. I can say, welcome to the simulation. I have to spell correctly here. And then I can put in some text as well around how this all works. So let me go. What I did in advance is I got some text together just to make this go faster. And let me just go ahead and select this. Let's see here. There we go. Okay, I'm going to copy that, and I'll go over here and I'll just paste this in. So now I have some text kind of introducing the simulation. But I also have this media, and I can upload different things. I could put an image in here. I could put a different kind of thing, like an image map or something like that if I want to. For today, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to use that initial image. I'm going to let me actually put in a video instead today. I'm going to put a video in here. I can put in YouTube videos if I want, but fortunately for me, Tom had already uploaded this community coronavirus video. This is not in YouTube, it's a Vimeo, and as long as the video is available online, you can put anything in here you want. So what I'm going to do is put in the link to the Vimeo video that Tom uploaded. I'm just going to copy this, and I'll paste this into the link here. And now you can see over here, there's a link to the video. So I've got this kind of introduction put together. All right, next what I want to do is create some outputs to look at for the simulation. So this is sort of my next step. I start with this page for the design, and then from here, what I want to do is go to the dashboard and look at specific pages in the simulation. And what I might do is plot out, like if I go back to the Vensim model here, I might plot out the susceptible, exposed, infected plots in part of this, and maybe also look at the strain on both hospitals and public health. So those are things that I might be interested in. And I can plot different types of graphs here. So if I click on a graph type, you can see there's different charts available. I can do bar charts, histograms, line charts, etc. I'm going to go ahead and use line charts today, and I'm going to start off here, just kind of looking at my model. I'm going to do susceptible, exposed, infected. So I'll start off with susceptible here. I should try to spell this correctly. Susceptible. All right, and then I can change the x-axis, but I really don't want to. It's going to use time for Vensim as the x-axis, which is a good default. But I do want to add in y-axis information here. So the y-axis is the variable plot, and I need to put a variable in. For scenario comparisons in general, you can only put one variable in because you're going to be comparing the outcome of that variable to other runs of the scenarios, right? So usually you only plot a single variable at a time in here. Let me find one here. This is the susceptible one. And notice when I start typing, it looks up the variable. So there's a concept in Epicenter called model introspection, which will look up variables within the interface here. So I found the susceptible one, and here it's plotted it out for me. I can see this over time in the base case, sort of the basic run from the simulation, where it starts off at 100,000 and then drops over time. So let me go ahead and continue that for other ones. I'm going to do the next one, which is exposed. And I'm going to put in that variable. Again, start typing the name of the variable, and it comes up. And so there's exposed. You can see that changing over time. And then finally, I think the last one is infected. Is that right? Yeah, infected. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll put that in here. And I, again, look up that variable from the Vensim model that I just uploaded, and there's infected. Okay, so now I've got my three plots that I want to include here. And I also maybe want to put in the strain on the healthcare system here. So the first thing I was thinking about is doing hospital strain up here. Let me go ahead and put that in. And I'll find that variable in my list here. Here we see hospital strain as a variable that I can plot, and there it is over time. And then finally, I want to do, I think it's called healthcare strain or public health strain, pardon me. So we'll call this public health strain. And I can do other things too. I can change the formatting and so forth. There's other, but just as a basics, I think this is a good place to start. All right, so let me go ahead and find that variable, which is public health strain. And we've got that plot in here as well. All right, so I've got beginnings of this. I could add some more to it. I could add additional pages and so forth. I'm gonna leave it at this for now. But I do wanna be able to make some decisions. And going back to Tom's model, if I go to these controls, I can see a number of things I could have as decisions that would be made to experiment with different policies. I'm gonna focus on the top two here. I've got behavioral risk reduction and behavior reaction time. So those are the two variables I'll use to experiment with different policies here. I'll click on decision type, and you can see there's a range of different decisions that are here. And what control type you use for these generally depends on what decision type you're using. So, in Tom's model for, let me just go to equations here. For Tom's model with behavioral risk reduction, this is a fractional reduction in the risk from social distancing, and it starts off at 0. So the range of this thing, it goes from 0 to 1, meaning that social distancing is completely reducing. If it's 1, it's completely reducing the risk, and if it's 0, there's no reduction in risk, and it starts off at 0 with no reduction in risk. So I'm going to use that then, and what that implies to some extent, if I have something that's going from 0 to 1, a good way of kind of controlling what the user can do is to use a slider. Because if I put a slider in here, what it's going to do is it's going to limit the input from the user. They can't put in a negative number. They can't put in a number that's greater than 1, which would be not a reasonable input for this. And this is again, this variable is called behavioral risk reduction. And I'm going to choose that variable from here, behavioral risk reduction, and I'll put a format in it. Here it's going to be a percentage, might be a nice way to format it, where I'm going to show the percentage from 0 to 100%. I'll start the minimum of 0, the maximum of 1, not 100, because the variable actually ranges from 0 to 1. And the increment here, I'll go in 1% increments, or 0.01. So that'll work for that. And then for the next bit, what I want to do is put in behavior reaction time. And if I look at this variable, this is in weeks, and it's the time from first infection to when the risk reductions are fully implemented. So that's what I want to include here. And there's different input types I could use for this one, but I thought might be fun here is to use a drop-down input for this. And I'm going to call this, I'm going to put the tooltip in here. And this is the behavior reaction time. Behave your reaction time. And then what I want to do is maybe have different drop downs I can use. I can say, 1 week, and then that value would be 1. I can have another one that says 4 weeks, and that value would be 4. And then I can add another one, which is say, let's say 8 weeks as the final option for today. So 8 weeks, and that value would obviously be 8. Okay, so now I've got the basics of this set up. And that's enough to get started, really. So let me go ahead and save this. And I'm going to go back to my project homepage and go to run the project. And I see the opening of this interface here. I can see welcome to the simulation, COVID-19 setup with the introduction. I've got the video here. I'll play a little bit of this.
Hi, this is Tom Fitteman with Ventana Systems.
Okay, so we get the video here. We can maximize it if we want to, make it bigger or not, to kind of see that video. We have the dashboard with the starting plots here for all of these things and the baseline available. And then we've got decisions that are going into this that I can change and run over time. So let's try one here where I set my behavioral risk reduction to 50% and say that's going to take 4 weeks to implement. So this is my risk reduced by 50%. This is my scenario that I want to run here, and I want to compare it to the base run. So I'll go ahead and click run. and it's kind of building up this interface and showing results for it. And I see the second run here with the green line of the risk reduction down by 50%, and I can compare that outcome over time in the strain on the public health system. And just for fun, maybe as a final run here, what I'll do is I'll run it all the way up to 100%, and I'll say that takes 8 weeks, and I'll say this is my no risk strategy, where I somehow am able to reduce the risk completely, to 100% here. And the outcome here should probably be pretty obvious, but let's just take a look. Okay, there's our last line here, and what you can see is the no risk run results in no hospital strain, and obviously there are intermediate runs from there too, but you can see how this gets built up. And because I used this template, I kind of got automatically this run manager, and what the run manager does is build up a list of all the scenarios that I've created. And if I don't like some of them, like maybe that last one I didn't think was particularly useful, I can delete it. And now if I go back to the dashboard, what you can see is there are different runs available from within there. Okay, oops, let me go back there, sorry. Let's run that one more time, kind of see that result. Okay, there we go. So there's our different outputs over there. All right, so I have a few minutes left, and what I thought I'd do, just kind of taking a look at that poll results again. I think the next one that people are kind of interested in is multiplayer. So I'm going to just quickly show you a simple multiplayer game, and I'm going to build this a little bit faster than I did for the first one, but it's still using the same techniques and things like that. I'm just going to go through that. And again, what I would do here is go to Sims, go to create a new project, and I'm going to do, this is a pricing game, price war game, I guess, or something like that. I'll call it that. I'm going to make this authenticated, and for multiplayer games, I must use authenticated, and the reason for that is that I need to have different end users log in to play different roles. So I'm going to go ahead and create that account. I have a model already created for it, and I'm going to just quickly show it to you, what that looks like. Let me go ahead and open it here. Oh, I bet I have it. Yeah, here we go. Here's the model. Well, just give it a second here. If I get stuck, I'll just upload the model without it. We'll see how that goes. All right, I'm going to let that go for a second. I'm not sure what's happening with that, but that's okay. So what I can do here is just upload the model that I created. I'll explain what's in the model when we're into it here. So here's my Price Wars model. I'm uploading this. Oops, I have to put it in the model folder first. Let me do that. Okay, so here's Price Wars. I'm going to upload it. So now my model is in here. And again, it's a .vmfx format. And again, it has to be either .vmf or vmfx. I'm going to use the interface builder. And this time, instead of choosing run comparison, I'm going to choose multiplayer. So this is an arrayed model. And the arrayed model has two elements to it. It has P1 and P2 for the arrays, which represent player 1 and player 2. And so the first thing that Epicenter asked me are, what are the array elements, if I'm using array elements, that I want to use for this? And if I don't have array elements, that's okay too. You can still build a multiplayer game, but usually people use array elements to distinguish different players within the same world. And so this simulation, this model that I have, has these two players in it. So let me go ahead and confirm that. And what this does then is it lets me create an interface that's going to have multiple players in it. I can view it from here. So let me go here. I'm just going to change the title of it to make it clear. I'm going to call this Price War. And then if I go to the introduction, you can see the title on here. I'm going to create a simple page where I want to share results about what's going on. You can see there are other plot types that are available because, again, I'm using a different set of tools. I'm using the multiplayer thing, so there's different things available than what would be available in single player. And it lets me plot things out differently here. And one of the things I might be interested in is what the price is over time. So I'm going to go ahead and select variables for this. I'm going to look up, again, the variable in here. And notice here, now it's identifying different kinds of prices I can show P1 price, which is player 1, or P2 price. And actually what I want to do here is show both of them. So I'm going to show one here. I'm going to add another variable. I'm going to do price P2, which is the second variable for this. Then I'm going to put on some other options here. I'm going to put on a legend to make it easier to see what's going on. And I'm going to enable markers here, and we'll see that when we deploy it. And then finally, what I'd like to do potentially is plot out the results for the current player who's logged in, maybe show their, I can't remember if I have raw profit or revenue in this one. We'll find out soon. So this is going to be my result, or my profit, let's say. And I'm going to put in a variable, in this case, Here I'm going to look up profit. Okay, I do have profit. And notice here it can have profit P1 and profit P2. But what I want is I want to show the profit by the current user. So if I go profit user role, what it will do is it will fill in what player this is based on P1 or P2, depending on who's logged in currently. So I'm going to use profit user role, and it's going to show profit based on who's currently logged in. And again, for this one, what I'm going to do is enable markers. I don't really need a legend on this one, so that's okay. All right. Then for decisions, this one will have a fairly simple set of decisions. I'm going to go ahead and click on set user type and do a text input for this. I'm going to put price in for my product or whatever we're selling here, I guess. And then here, what I want it to be is price by user role, because I don't want to use, I want the user that I'm currently logged in is to just set only their price, not their alternative price. So user role will depend on who's logged in, will get the price here, and we'll fill that in. I can use different formatting for this if I want to. It has dollar format. I can use other formats too. Let me just do this quickly, just to get, if I wanted to use euros instead of dollars here, for example, I could do that. Here we go. All right, so I'm going to use the euro format and put this in. This is going to be my format for the day for the price when I use it, and that'll show up here. And then that's enough to get started. The last bit here is I want to really create where I'm going to require consensus on the simulate button. So when I hit simulate, and I'll change the name of this as submit decisions, because that's more like a game, right? So I'd say submit decisions here. And when I submit, what it's going to do is it's going to wait to submit until both players have submitted decisions, kind of like the value proposition simulation that I showed earlier today. Okay, so I've got that turned on. That's enough to save. For this style of simulation, I need to use some of the more elaborate features within Epicenter, and specifically what I need to do is create a group and then create a world within that group where players can play together and assign them that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I'm going to create a group for my world. I'm going to add a group up here. I'm going to call this my example group here, and it's filled in. You can see here that I can set an expiration date for it. So I can say this account, isn't going to be available, after, let's say May 1st or something like that. I can set the group name. I can also set the run limit, the number of times that the end users of the simulation can run it, or the maximum users. And a lot of people use this even for creating trial accounts where the expiration might be a week from now and say, I'm going to give you access for a week and then it's going to shut down. And that's done by creating a group. So I've got a group now created, and what I need to do next is add end users. There's many ways of adding end users. I can upload them one by one. I can upload multiple end users at once using a template, or I can even allow end users to self-register if I want to do that. And there's sort of a process for allowing self-registration that's in here. For today, and just sort of in the interest of time, what I'm going to do is upload users. So let me go ahead and do that. And I have previously created a little template here for this to kind of show what this would look like. Let's see if I can find it. Here we go. And let me bring this in. Oh, that's not the right one. Let's see. That was. Oh, here we go. Okay. So here's that list that I created. I'm going to call this price war. And there I can see the usernames that are filled in. And a password for this account. I'm going to go ahead and save that with this. It's going to price war 1, price war 2, and price war FAQ. And let me go ahead and upload that. And I'm going to go upload that. And now what's happening is it's creating the users in this account. It says 3 users have been saved. I'll go back to the group list. You can see them in here now. One of them should be the facilitator. So I'm going to change this person to being the facilitator for the group. And then what I also need to do is to assign them specific roles in the sim. And what I can do is just auto assign by pressing auto assign button, and it recognizes here that P1 is going to be assigned to player 1, P2 to player 2. Now, before I run this, I need to do one last thing, which is I realized, because I was kind of flying blind with that model a little bit, I used the wrong variable name for the decision. So let me go fix that. I just thought of that. I'm going to go to my decisions page here, and I look at this. It wasn't price that I meant to enter, which I had here, as you can see, but I meant to use price decision. So let me try that. So there's price decision. That is the variable that I intended to use. Let me go ahead and save that as a fix here. I'm glad I remembered that. just before we got started here. So now I've got the accounts working, and I've created these two users, P1 and P2, or player 1 and player 2, and I'm going to, like I did before for the value proposition simulation, I'm going to create two more instances here of the browser so that I can run them independently. So here's one of them, and then here's the other one. Well, here we go. So here's the other user. And again, I like this people feature for testing multiplayer sims. If you're doing this, is a good way to do it. And then what I need to do is remind myself what the login is for these two players. And if I go back here, I have price war 1 as one user. I'll put that in here, and I'll put in a password. Hopefully I got that right. I'll log in. Okay, good. I'm logged in as one of the players here. You can see price war 1 up here for that user. I'll go to price war 2 over here. And put in the password. Okay. So now I'm logged in as price war 2 over here. And let me go back to price war 1. So you can see that up here again. And what I'm going to do is start by making a decision. So you can see it starts off at 100 euros. For this player, I'm going to make the price 200. So I'm going to have 200 euros for this person's price. I'm going to go ahead and submit it. And what you can see here is saying waiting for other players to submit. So player 1 has submitted, player 2 has not yet submitted. I'm going to switch now views to look at player 2. So now I'm at player 2 logged in as price war 2. I'm going to go to decisions here. This person, I'm going to say charges less. They're going to charge 50 euros, so only 50 euros for this particular player. And I'll submit decisions. And because this is the last person in this world of 2 players to submit, the simulation will automatically advance. And here we see the split in price and the change in profitability for price war 2. Let's see what happened to player 1. So player 1 did slightly better in their profit, but you still see the change in price. And we could continue from there. We could go, let's say in the next round, they each go with 100 euros and proceed that way. This person will increase their price to 100. So now they'll match again as we submit for the second round here. And here you see the price is merging again, profit changing a second time. And you can continue this round by round as you go through the simulation. So this is just a starting point. I know I'm almost at the top of the hour, so I'm going to leave it at those 2 examples today, but there's a lot more that you can do. There are facilitator pages that you can set up as well that are provided as part of the template tool. And I want to leave you today, I want to leave a little bit of time for questions, but I want to leave you today with a little bit more information around what you need to do to run the simulation and other resources that are available for building your simulation if you want to take a Vensim model and upload in the future. So just as a reminder, you must upload a VMFX or VMF binary file. So the MDL files do not work with Epicenter. So just make sure you're uploading a binary file when you're working with Epicenter. And then secondly, if you're doing a game, you must use constants, or you need to use gaming variables. And let me just quickly show that to you. See if I can get this back here. Just a second. Okay, so let's get back to Vensim here. Okay, that's one. I'm going to close this and I'm going to open my new model, which is the price wars model here. No, that's not where it is. Let's open it here. And I want to use this model. There we go. Okay, so here's the price decision that I was using in the price wars model a moment ago. If I look at the equations for this, what you can see here is this is set up as an auxiliary gaming. And so that's going to let you change decisions round by round in your simulation. So this is an important part. If you're doing a multiplayer, single player game, is use auxiliary gaming for setting that up. So those are the 2 sort of key things I wanted to share around running this with you need to use the VMFX or VMF file, and you need to use that gaming variable for setting it up. There are various resources that are available online for running this. There's a support forum, there are online reference guides, there's webinars like today, If you want to create an account, if you want to try this out on your own and upload your own Vensim model, go to forio.com/epicenter. And if you don't have an account, it'll let you register from there. And then you can have a free account that has, it's more limited than some of the things I shared today. It doesn't have authenticated users like I shared, but it has other capabilities. You can experiment with it, and that'll be a good starting point. If you'd like help developing user interfaces, or you just like other things, you can email us at support@forio.com, and we're available to do that as well. Before I wrap up on this bit, let me just show you the support forum and the online reference, and we'll go from there. So if I go back to, let's see, let me get my mouse here. Go back to Epicenter here. Oh, what happened here? I lost my mouse for some reason. Well, let's see. Having a little, oh, there we go. Awesome. All right, good. I'm glad my mouse back. All right, so here I'm in Epicenter, and I can see, here's the place where I can see documentation. And if I type in, for example, Vensim, here, it's going to give me information around loading different files in Vensim, and it kind of gives this explanation of the types of things. So this is going to give a starting point for this. Again, the way I got to that is within Epicenter, click on documentation. I also have, there's a support forum available, and this is a place to ask questions if you're building something, you want to see what's going on, and you can see this is very active, and there's lots of people. This is a very good way to get answers quickly if you have a question about using the platform. Okay. We're almost at the end of the webinar for today, and I know there's several questions here, and like I said, I'll try to get to some of them right now, and we'll leave some for later as well. So let me just go to the Q&A section, and I see a bunch of questions here. Let's see. Questions about, can Vensim be used to evaluate biological populations like insects? Absolutely. Vensim, is a system dynamics modeling package, and that's a good tool for building building models. There's someone else who, let's see what else I have here. Is this platform free to use? How about for academics? If not, I'm interested to know the prices. Yeah, that's a good question. So the platform, there are free accounts available, as I explained. You can sign up again. Going to forio.com/epicenter to get a free account. There are also for pay accounts, and the big difference for pay accounts is that they allow for authenticated users. There's pricing available on our website that explain the price of the for pay accounts if you want to go look at that. Yeah, there's a set of them available there. What is the website of the COVID-19 model for Vensim? Yeah, I'd be happy to share that quickly. So the website, a good way to find this if you're interested in this COVID model is to go, like what I do when I search for it is type Tom Fiddaman model library. And that's such a popular search term that it's easy to find. And Fiddaman is spelled with 2 Ds. So it's Tom Fiddaman, 2 A's and 2 Ds model library. If you search on that, you'll see this thing called Meta SD. And if you look at metasd.com, anyway, I guess that's a better way to find it. Just to go to metasd.com to find Tom's library for this. And this is the examples of this, and actually a lot of other Vensim models as well that are available here. Okay, so I think I have time for one last question. Does Forio work with older versions of Vensim, like 7.1 or before? Yes, it does. So you can use version 7.1 of Vensim and earlier, and for those ones, you wouldn't have a .vmfx file, you would have .vmf, and that would work just fine. I think that's all the time I have for questions for today. Thank you very much. We're going to be uploading a copy of this webinar to the web shortly, and we'll send you a link to it in case you want to share this with your colleagues or review it for later.